The Atherton tablelands, about an hour south of Cairns, has always produced an abundance of food. Once it was cabbages, lettuce and carrots, but now there are more than 60 different crops ranging from citrus and bananas to potatoes and grain, as well as niche products. Agronomist Paul Keevers has worked in the region for 25 years.
We can grow anything you want on the tablelands pretty much. We've got the cool winters, we've got the nice warm summers. One of the unique places that we are allows us to grow tea, coffee, milk and sugar.
From here, the food travels a long way to reach dinner tables.
Most of our production goes anywhere across the eastern seaboard, right down to Melbourne. But we do have things like bananas, for example, get trucked to WA. And that's just domestically. We also export a lot of product through to Hong Kong, China, etc. So yeah, it's quite dramatic what we can actually achieve.
Oh, there's a house up there, there's a couple they missed.
Jim Coachie's family have been farmers here since 1948 and have been growing avocados for around 45 years. With about 8,000 trees, Jim is kept busy on the farm, in the packing shed and arranging distribution.
We fight with the chains to try and get the best price we can for our fruit.
Coachie avos are sold in supermarkets around Australia. From far north Queensland, they're sent by road to distribution centres in capital cities along the eastern seaboard, with most sold in Melbourne, about 3,000 kilometres away. But many, which have been trucked south, are sent north again.
My job is to grow the fruit. And then I give it my blessings and kiss it goodbye. And it goes to a transport hub. It gets cooled down in temperature and it gets transported safely to somewhere where they will break that down and break that pallet down to supply any number of customer orders that is like a starburst in all directions.
It's probably no surprise the distribution of food in Australia is controlled by just a few.
All of our local produce goes to Brisbane, gets divvied up and then gets sent back to us.
Lara Wild is the Managing Director at Agri-Food Catalyst, which works to connect the whole supply chain from paddock to plate.
The irony of having such a productive region where we can grow almost anything and we can grow as much as you want, but by the same token having shelves in our shops that are lacking in things is just mind-boggling.
Those shelves are even more empty 600 kilometres west of the tablelands in the lower Gulf of Carpentaria. It's one of Australia's poorest regions, and although not that far from a food bowl, it's a food desert.
If you're living in a regional and remote community, that food security can be really challenging to get.
And in a region of vast wetlands and sweeping ranges, transporting food is even more difficult during the wet season between November and April. For the 3,000 people in the small communities and pastoral operations, access to food depends on how much rain has fallen.
The Gilbert River Bridge is the predominant problem for us because once that bridge goes out, it cuts off Croydon, it cuts off Normanton, Burketown, Corumba, Mornington Island, Doomadgee. We're a hat town and this is where the councillors hang their hats.
Grazier Barry Hughes is Mayor of the Etheridge Shire, which includes the communities of Mount Surprise, Ainslie, Forsyth and Georgetown. In summer, floodwaters regularly cut the road connecting Cairns to the Northern Territory, forcing everyone in the lower Gulf to ration food and other commodities.
We run out, we run low. In this day and age, it's not acceptable.
So this is the other stall?
It's not just the shortage of food during the wet, but the cost at any time of the year. Elder Francine George is shopping for the 4 adults and 1 child in her household. Her food bill is staggering.
This has come to $750 and that will probably last us until this Friday. Then we need to go and buy more. But there's definitely no meat in this. It's just, fruit and veggies and cleaning stuff and some other items.
Those extra food miles mean remote shoppers will pay about twice as much for their groceries as those in southern cities.
The 3 litre milk in the city, you're paying, what, $4, $5? In Normanton, you're paying $8.
And treats for her grandson don't come cheap.
He likes some of the snacky things, but a 24 box of drumsticks, $43. That's how much it cost.
Food supplies are trucked in every 2 to 3 days, but in the wet season, regular deliveries are interrupted by the weather. Often, there isn't enough to go around.
If you're not quick enough, you go in there and there's nothing left. And you've got to wait for them to get the next truckload of food. Like coming to the end of the fortnight, and we're basically struggling to have food in our cupboard.
Limited access to fresh and affordable produce has serious health implications.
I see it firsthand that kids and that they go without. They go without fruit and veggies. They go without a decent meal because they just don't have the food. Indigenous health will never improve with all the gaps that are out in our communities.
There are plenty of cattle in the lower Gulf, but that doesn't mean there's local beef on the shelves.
A lot of times we'll get meat out of Tasmania, well, it's just wherever the wholesaler gets it from, but it just comes from everywhere.
Gulf cattle are mostly for breeding rather than fattening for market, so grazier and butcher Ash Gallagher buys in beef. It's his biggest cost.
Insurance, transport costs. When you live up here, you know, like a lot of our beef comes out of Brisbane, so it's a direct truck straight up from Brisbane. That's the best way to get it. Electricity, you know, doubled.
Ash does sell locally sourced seafood, like barramundi, king salmon and the famous Karumba prawns. But across the road at Foodworks, prawns and box seafood are sourced from Vietnam. The owners would prefer to stock local produce, but say they're focused on costs. Jean Giedrick is a business advisor for the Gulf Economic Aboriginal Trust, which owns the supermarket. He says the business operates on very low profit margins for fruit, vegetables and other essentials.
We would probably run on about 2 or 3% profit margin. It's not a great deal. We need to be viable, but our chairman's saying fruit and veg and essentials, we're going to stay on minimal prop. And, we might jack up the other prices.
The store was established to provide food security to the lower Gulf region, but that's challenging when it's 2,000 kilometres from the major distribution centre in Brisbane.
Particularly in our high seasons, our freight costs anywhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a month.
Other Gulf communities are also exploring options.
There is one particular community, Mornington Island, that have aspirations for a local food production hub model. And this is where they would like to have a commercial market garden on country where they can produce, grow, process and sell their own food.
Dr. Sunny Oliver Bennetts works for Arup, a global consultancy firm focused on sustainable development. She says collaboration between all levels of government, the private sector and communities needs to occur before high food prices in remote communities come down and the quality of fresh food goes up.
We tracked a basket of goods, the fruit and vegetables in this basket of goods. When they travelled to Mornington Island and Bummaga, they were 67% times the price of those foods in Brisbane.
Back on the Atherton tablelands, agronomist Paul Keevers says food distribution is determined by economics.
The person that dictates the logistics, realistically, is the person buying it from the farmer. And in most instances, it's either a Coles or a Woolworths.
He says that means there's no benefit to living in or near a food bowl.
It's the processing component. And the centralisation of processing has created that need to send things further away.
Atherton is almost 2,000 kilometres from Brisbane, and it takes 2 to 3 days for fresh produce to arrive back there by truck.
We've found in times gone by and in other competitors and that product then finds its way back up to far north Queensland. So some of the things actually get freighted to Brisbane then have to get freighted back here for customers to buy.
The local independent grocer, IGA, has been buying fruit, vegetables, poultry, meat and specialty products directly from farmers and growers for more than 30 years.
The benefit I have is the relationships we've got with our farmers is I can have mandarins that are on the tree in the morning and that can potentially be in our back dock and on the shelf by that afternoon.
He says not only is the produce fresher, but local farmers are supported with better prices and fewer overheads like freight. Matt hopes the Atherton model is one more local supermarkets consider.
There is an economy of scale. We are a big independent supermarket, so we are able to take a fair quantity of product, which I definitely think helps both the farmer and us. It's definitely something I think people need to look into more.